Welcome to Triumph Talks. Today, I am circling back around with Bailey Smith, author of Married to an Illusion, a survivor's guide to identifying and escaping narcissistic abuse. We've been going through her book and we've covered a lot of topics. And today's topic is actually what you see in the tagline of the book, which is how to get away from a narcissist, which is section 3 of her book. There's 4 sections. If you are just finding this show for the first time, please watch it because it is extremely important to understand that getting away from a narcissist can be very difficult and you're going to need the tips. And if you haven't watched any of the shows previous, be sure to go back because there's a lot to know about identifying the narcissist and understanding just what's happening to you. Bailey, welcome back to Triumph Talks.
Thank you for having me, Melanie. You can't escape if you don't know. So, if you have no clue what you're dealing with and you're in a relationship with a narcissist, you have no idea what you're in for, how they are grooming you, controlling you, manipulating you. They literally, are working their magic. And by the time you realize, you're in a very dangerous place, especially if you want to escape.
Right. Getting away from them is not the same as getting away from someone who's neurotypical. So I've got your book here. And for this episode, I've just picked out some key points that you've made that I'd like to read and then have you expound on them. So we'll start with chapter 17, which is the first chapter in this section of your book, titled, Learn All You Can About Narcissism to Help You Accept It's Real. And you begin this chapter by comparing a narcissist relationship to being in a tornado. So I'm going to read just a little bit of that, and then I'd like you to build on to what we've heard. And this gives the viewers a chance to get an idea of what you're teaching in this book. It says, tornadoes are powerful and destructive. If you are caught in its path, there may be little you can do as it sweeps you up off the ground and spins you like a rag doll. For a time, you are trapped in its circular gravity and may not even know what's happening. In the love bombing stage, the whirlwind you are caught up in feels amazing. Yes, you are dizzy, but it's the kind that is literally connected to powerful hormones called serotonin and oxytocin that are released when you fall in love. We all want to feel this euphoria, and as you have learned, narcissists intentionally trigger this hormone response as they lure you into becoming their supply. So, in the beginning, the swirling you are doing feels good, and you believe you are the happiest you've ever been. You have no desire to stop the merry-go-round you have found yourself on. What's actually happening is that you are spinning in a destructive cyclone, but just don't realize it yet. This truth starts to surface as you slam into the other debris in this whirlwind, and it hurts. This debris represents the many abuses that start to happen to you as the narcissist takes off the mask. And I'll point out here, there's a lot of keywords in these couple of paragraphs that I'm reading from earlier in your book. So again, anybody who's just watching this for the first time, if you don't know what the mask is and love bombing, be sure to watch some of the earlier episodes. So the narcissist takes off the mask and lets his garbage hit you. Although you are getting battered about, cut up and bloodied, both metaphorically and even literally, through cognitive dissonance, you don't accept the truth. There's no way this perfect person who completes you is doing this on purpose, or that she isn't the love of your life, your twin flame, or the soulmate you have been so exceptionally blessed to find. Some live in this tornado for decades or more before the truth starts to surface. It requires education to understand what is happening to you because it is so incomprehensible. There is no way you will come to the truth through your own rationale. And you actually have that italicized and bolded. I'll reread that. There is no way you will come to the truth through your own rationale. For this reason, the first step in escaping narcissism is education.
So I will expand on that and tell those that are watching this right now. Going back 2 decades, 2+ decades, nobody knew about narcissism. And I've mentioned this so many times. What people have now is an abundance amount of knowledge that's out there on social media, in books like mine and many others. So we thought, we had this great marriage and we were just tiptoeing around this crazy person when they had their crazy moments. We had absolutely no idea what we were dealing with. And during that time, we were sucked in. So the importance of the education and gaining the knowledge. And let me tell you something, it's a never ending learning experience. I'm out of this situation quite some time and I'm still learning. I'm still watching clips from other people. So there's constant knowledge out there. And that you got the people out there that have a blessing now to have the knowledge before they enter a relationship. Because once you enter that relationship and you are sucked in, it's a tornado. It becomes the wanting, especially when you decide you have had enough. It is not an easy process. So it is so important to get educated on narcissism, read what you can, know everything before you enter into a relationship. And Melanie and I have talked about this so many times. It is so crucial before you enter a relationship to know all the red flags that are out there so that you don't enter that relationship. Because once you're in, getting out is hell. And not only that, it's dangerous. So again,
that's the perfect setup for our next chapter in this section. And that is titled Make a Plan. So I'm going to go ahead and read a little bit of that. There's an important truth when it comes to escaping the abuse of a narcissist, and that is, it is dangerous. Once you have obtained education and better understand what you are facing, before you do anything to remove yourself from the situation, you need to recognize that the nature of narcissism causes them to not only be destructive to you while you're under their power, but that leaving a narcissist will not be easy and will most likely come with dangers to every aspect of your life, including your life itself. Narcissism is a disorder in thinking, and you need to understand how they think. Thus, why education is such an essential first step in order to make your escape. First of all, narcissists feel entitled to whatever they can take from you, and it is both right and necessary to punish you should you displease them. Whatever has happened, whatever went wrong to a narcissist, it is your fault. You must not leave a narcissist thinking that he or she will behave like a decent human being. Perhaps by now this goes without saying. However, it bears repeating, because even knowing this, we can still be caught off guard. The lengths a narcissist may go to destroy you can be incomprehensible.
Absolutely. When you try to escape a narcissist without a plan, you are putting your life, and if you have children in this case, in your case, it is dangerous. I'm talking about, we hear about murders, suicide, double homicide and then suicide. These women, majority of them were living in this kind of situation and wanted to leave. It's life and death. The education is life and death. And having that plan is life and death. It's not an easy thing, okay, to pick up and leave, especially if you have children. That people stay in this situation, unfortunately, because they're scared. But again, there is knowledge and information out there. I give some of it. There's so many videos you can watch. There's a tremendous amount of support out there if you look for it.
I think the really important key in what you're saying here, is the fact that you just, as natural as it might feel to say, this is bad, I'm leaving. Right. You can't just do that.
Right, exactly.
Not with them. Let me read another paragraph from this. I think it really does a good job. It says, remember, you are literally at war. War is fought strategically. So be strategic as you leave a narcissist. Where possible, do not be spontaneous, or you could leave yourself wide open to be flanked, surrounded, and crushed. And never forget, when a narcissist is losing control, they are at their most dangerous.
You're leaving a war zone. Mm-hmm. So that was so great how we had put that in the book. It's literally, you're at war. Now, when you want to make a plan you definitely, it's literally want to plan it like you're going into a witness protection program.
Mm.
You want to have family support. People know that where you are. Change your phones. You know, hidden location. You have to literally plan this like you're going into witness protection program. And then you figure it all out once you're out. Because if there's children involved, that could be, like kidnapping, and that's a whole other topic.
We can do a whole show on
They will go to no ends to damage you, to damage your children, to destroy you. Trust me, I've been there. Okay.
and they'll use the courts very effectively because they're smart.
They'll use social media. They will use your friends. They will use whoever they can to destroy you. They will defame you, make you look like you're the crazy one. Okay.
And you will feel crazy.
And know that you're not the one in the wrong. It took me time to finally come to that realization. I'm not the crazy one. And I don't, and anything that was put out there to communities, to the social media about me, whether it was photos, whether it was putting me on dating sites, you name it, I went through it. Once I knew my position in this whole thing, that I was a victim. I was a victim. I'm no longer a victim, but I was a victim, and I accepted it. And that was with a lot of help and a lot of knowledge.
Yeah.
Because I found it. It took a lot of time to find the right place, right situation. And that wasn't 20 years ago. That was 8 years ago. So, coming forward 8 years, just imagine how much more knowledge is out there and how many more books are out there and how many more podcasts and all that is out there at your fingers.
And you do a good job in your book in that first chapter that we just discussed. You actually provide a lot of really good resources, in specifics. And so, which is good to get your book, because right now we're sort of getting the overview, but you do provide some of the good resources that helped you. Yeah. So make a plan is important. So now we're going to start diving into some of the aspects of the plan.
I just wanted people to understand that when Melanie had said, you're not dealing with the norm. I don't remember what word you used. You're dealing with somebody that they're almost inhumane. I mean, the way their brain works is not like a normal person. Two people they get married, they love each other, they realize they've fallen out of love, they don't coexist anymore. But if they have children, they love their children more than they hate each other. That's the norm.
Right.
The norm is when one parent hates the other more than they love their children. So just think about the damage that they're willing to go through to punish you, because they don't care about anyone or anything. It's all about revenge. So that's something that you have to know. You're not dealing with the norm. And that's where education comes in. You have to be 20 steps ahead when you're planning, 20 steps ahead, because you have to imagine that they're going to kill you. That's the desperation you want.
Many of them do. And if they haven't, it's only because they didn't have the opportunity. I mean, that's really scary.
I could have been killed.
Yeah.
And that's in my book.
And you talk in your book about people who were killed. I mean, you actually show those examples. And I think that's really important, especially for anyone who's watching this show, which is why I say this episode is extremely important, even if you haven't watched anything up to this point, to understand the real danger that you're in. And you can go back and learn more about what is wrong with narcissists. And there's a lot of
come that way.
Yeah, all of that. But the most important thing for you to realize is that they're very dangerous. You can't anticipate what they're going to do, because the way that they think is so non-human. Like you said, you call it inhumane, but it's really just they're not quite human, and the neurotypical brain that we have cannot imagine how their brain is working. And so, yeah. Okay. So the next chapter is where you start to give some more details about the specifics of the process of leaving them. And this first specific is something that you titled Go No Contact or Gray Rock. And it says, once you have made the move away from your narcissist, another essential step in successfully leaving the relationship is to go no contact. Because of the trauma bond, which creates Stockholm syndrome, and the literal addiction you have to that person, just like with any addiction, the only way to recover and not fall back into the same destructive situation is to remove any access to it. The need to go no contact can't be overemphasized. This is where most who are pulled back into the vortex of narcissists fall down. And then I'm going to jump down a couple paragraphs and turn it back to you. In the process of leaving a narcissist, you are going to question yourself. You're going to wonder if your narcissist was really that bad. And if you have it wrong, you will likely even question if you are the narcissist in the relationship, because narcissists will gaslight you into thinking it. If you go back and make contact, reopen that door even slightly, your narcissist will bust your door open and you'll be back in the tornado all over again. He or she will love bomb you, manipulate you, and gaslight you into thinking you made a mistake. And before you even realize it, you'll find yourself right back where you started, and perhaps even worse off, because you must now be punished for trying to leave. You absolutely must not give in to the temptation to make any contact. Please take this very seriously. Remove any potential to contact or see this person, even from a distance, even from social media. Cut off all and any ties possible. Yeah. And I'll note that you do have what to do when there's children involved, and you legally can't do that. Right. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But I'd like you to really talk about this concept of no contact and how you see that happening.
So, going no contact with someone that you were in a relationship or married with, or you thought was your soulmate for decades, is what trauma bond is. You're so connected, or you're so codependent onto them, that it is the hardest thing. And, in my book, you'll read some of my story of how I did remove myself, but I kept getting sucked back in because of my kids. I kept trying to bring my kids into to continue having a relationship with him, because I didn't want to be the alienator. And every single time I did that, he harmed me, not necessarily physically, but he harmed me, and I ended up in a horrific situation. That's why the knowledge, the awareness, education is so important, because they're not changing. They are who they are. They cannot get fixed. They are who they are. And they will go to no bounds, no ends to punish you. Okay? And it's very hard to go no contact. It's very hard to go even like gray rock, because if you have children, it's very difficult. Okay. But if you're alone and you're not in that situation when kids are involved, you've been attached to this person for so long that bond is there. That's why I call this book Married to an Illusion, because no matter what, they're not somebody you thought you knew.
Right. And you have to just cut it off, like you'd have to stop drinking if you're an alcoholic. You cannot have one sip of alcohol or you're back on the wagon.
That is a perfect example. That is a perfect wagon. Like it's an addiction, right? You said it.
Right. It's a literal addiction.
They bring the serotonin, the what was the word you used?
Oxytocin, serotonin, endorphins, all those chemicals.
So, think of being in a relationship with a narcissist and having to go cold turkey and having no contact as an addiction. That's a perfect analogy, because people will understand that more than what it's like for, obviously afterwards there's a lot of work you have to do on yourself, because it's not an easy process.
Yeah, I think the thing that's so important is what you said, and that is that if you don't completely cut it off, where possible, we'll talk about children in just a second, they will get in and use their manipulative tactics. They'll get in your head and they'll make you think you're making a wrong choice, that it's your fault. They will do those things. And so, depending on how many times you want to step back in that cyclone, you're not going to stop that until you completely cut it off. And it is an actual physical addiction, which means that you're going to go through withdrawals and you're going to want to go back to them. You're going to want to try to talk to them. We'll talk about that, how you can't ever get closure. But so let's move into that next part now. What do you do when you have children? And that's where this term gray rock comes in. So I'm just going to read a little bit and let you talk more about that. Now, with that said, there are some instances where completely cutting the person off is not possible. This is true when you have been married and need to go through legal proceedings before you can completely sever the relationship. And it's especially true when kids are involved, as much as it would be safer and healthier to immediately go no contact. Legally, you can't unless there is a restraining order or some other action that gives you lawful separation. In these cases, you need to do the next best thing and go gray rock. The goal is to deal with the narcissist with the least amount of contact possible. Only communicate as necessary and as little as circumstances will allow. Whatever the subject is that requires your response, stay only on that topic. Do not deviate at all. If the narc makes an attempt to open any other conversation, it should be met with silence or returning the conversation correspondence back to the topic at hand.
And just a little side note here, you always want to have everything in writing, in text. You want to have proof, especially when it comes to children, because you will need that for court. I mean, to this day, I still have everything. I have to get rid of it. I have it on 3 different phones, printed out. I mean, obviously I kept a lot of it because of the book,
and you can get rid of it now too, because all of your children are adults, right?
When you write the book, you want to keep proof and everything.
Right.
And
but I just wanted to make the point that I would say if you still have children that are under that age and you would ever have the danger of him trying to take them, you'd want to have that. So don't get rid of it.
The reason why it's like an underlying thing, and it's something I really should just start discussing with my therapist on why I still keep so many things. Maybe it's a validation thing that I still have underlying trauma I still have to work on. It's a lifelong journey. So I can admit today I've accepted accountability for anything I've done to my children. But this is when you go through this horrific experience, it's a lifelong journey. 8 years into therapy, 8 years into my journey, I am still proud to say I need therapy. My kids are in therapy still. There's no shame. You have to not feel shame on yourself.
Now, circling back around to gray rock and kind of talking about that, I know that in your book, there's a lot of times when you were not recognizing how dangerous he was. And the neurotypical person thinks that it's important for children to have a relationship with both parents. And they should. They really should, except in the case of when you're dealing with these kinds of disorders. And so in your life, you actually made attempts to keep the relationship going, and they ended up in the worst disasters of all.
It's I could laugh, but it's not funny.
Yeah.
Because my children were so traumatized and harmed.
So in one of those situations, I would say you have a lot of cautionary tales that come out of your life experience. In one of the situations where you were just encouraging him to come and spend time with the kids, you actually ended up being arrested, imprisoned.
Well, that was one. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I had a restraining order put against me an afternoon, talking to my son's case manager. It was right after Passover. I mean, it's mind-boggling. Like, I look back, talking about it now with you, and memories coming back. It's like, wow, I can't believe that happened to me. But I do see what's going on in other people's situations where they're in court for 5 years and $500,000 later, and it's not settled, and the children or child have been terrorized and victimized and tried to commit suicide. I mean, it's
those are the reasons to go gray rock.
You're forced in a situation to have shared custody temporarily till you're divorced or whatever it is. And in many cases, they get more custody, you get more, whatever. We have a horrific system. I write about it in my book. I don't write enough about it because I didn't experience that, thankfully. I had a taste of it, but I didn't experience family court. But in that case, it's very, you have no choice. You have to show your kids that you love them more than you hate the other party. And you have to show them the consistency and do your part. But you yourself, when it comes to that abuser, have to go gray rock, have very little interaction with them whatsoever. It's about the kids. There are apps out there. You can have conversations that the court can get,
Yeah, that's another thing that, again, why your book is so important, because you do provide these resources so that people know what are the apps, what are the software, what are the means for accomplishing things like going gray rock, because it's definitely not a normal thing to need to have a wall between you, while that's somewhat permeable because you still have to deal with them.
I just want to give you a funny little scenario of how psycho my narc was. Even on those apps, he would write these horrible things and curse me out and threaten me. That's how.
Even in front of the fact that it's being monitored. Yeah.
Well, it wasn't monitored. It could have been told to the court.
Right. It could have been.
That had I had that scenario. Just imagine not caring what you're writing. There is education out there. There is awareness. One of the things I'm constantly fighting for is community education and community awareness, because you do need a community support. And that's something that I'm trying very hard to bring out there, no matter what country you live in, what culture, whatever it is, to have a huge support system. And it's very important that communities start educating themselves. It's a big problem.
Yeah. Well, it's a topic. Well, it's actually a topic that is in this section. It's one of the, we're just touching on probably the first half of the chapters in this section, and definitely the importance of community. I think it would be a whole show, really, is what we're saying. Yeah. All right. So the next chapter in here is titled, "You Will Not Get Closure. Don't Even Try." And I'll read just a little bit from that one. One of the hardest things to accept about narcissism is that they are completely irrational and are the type of people who will say there is no light while staring directly at the sun. Facts don't matter to narcissists. You can never educate them on the truth. The only thing that matters is their chosen reality, and they are important enough that they actually feel, although it may be subconsciously, that the law of physics bends to their will. When escaping narcissistic abuse, you must accept and adhere to the reality that you will never get closure from them. We all want closure. It's what helps us move on in healthy ways from any changes in life. But when it comes to the narcissist, you must not even try. In the very effort, you put yourself in danger of being sucked back in, and certainly of being abused, because destroying their image and fantasy with reality will not bring about understanding. It will only generate anger, which is sometimes fierce enough to be deadly. In order to effectively go no contact or gray rock, you must completely let go of the notion of closure. This is where professional counseling becomes extremely important. When you can never find that satisfaction from a narcissist, professional counseling can help guide you to a place where you give yourself permission to let go of those things that keep you stuck. It's
very important that you understand that narcissists cannot get better. Their brain does not work like a regular, normal person. It's not a mental health issue, okay? And this is where a lot of people out there that don't really have the knowledge of narcissism, but do have knowledge of mental health, they're not giving the proper message. A narcissist It took me a long time to realize this. They cannot get better. Narcissism and PT disorder is not a mental health issue. It is a psychotic issue. And medication, guidance, counseling will never help because they never take accountability for any of their actions. They have done nothing wrong. You're the bad one. You're the crazy one. You're the one that broke the marriage. You're the one that broke the family. They take no accountability. To this day, my ex has created a new narrative to my children. The ones that do have what to do with him, totally new narrative, creating a made up narrative. And that's what they do. They keep creating new narratives to their new partners, to their new friends, to their new life. So somebody that cannot take accountability, you can't work with them. So these are very, very important facts. I kept thinking he can get better. And that's why I kept trying with the kids. They cannot get better. They will only get worse. Or they'll get better creating those narratives and changing their image and all that kind of stuff. So you will never get closure with somebody who can't own up to what they have done, the damage, the irreparable damage that they've done. So these are just such important things that you have to understand. You have to create your own closure in whatever way, shape, or form it is for you.
So this is a great segue, what you're saying, to understand that you can't have closure, and you advise get your closure elsewhere, you just said. And so that can be talking to other people who've been through it, so you can give each other closure. That's why the counseling groups are really good, the support groups and meeting with counselors. And the other important thing that kind of goes hand in hand with not getting closure is the idea that love does not conquer all. And so let me read that paragraph. Although a narcissist is incapable of loving you, the love you have felt is real and strong. Those who have fallen in love with and been targeted by a narcissist tend to be highly empathetic people. In some cases, they find their life purpose in helping and healing others. This is what attracts narcissists to us, and it is why we find so much joy in loving them. We feel their insatiable need and want for us, and it feeds our craving to matter in a cosmically significant way to someone else. Refer back to my earlier chapter on codependency. Yeah. So this idea that you being an empathetic person is actually the first thing that drew them to you. You also go on to talk about how it's the thing that can make it hard to get away, because we have to we have to separate ourselves from the belief that love will heal everything. Because I know we tend to be idealists and think that love is the answer. God is love. But in this situation, you have to divorce yourself essentially from that belief. Otherwise, you're still going to keep coming back because you just can't fail at loving someone, right?
And like we said, you can't love the narcissism matter. One of the hardest things that I had to really accept was that they're not capable of loving. I thought I was loved. It was control. I thought he loved his children. It was control or manipulation or whatever, however you want to look at it. So when you're educated and you're planning your escape and you have all this knowledge, it is way easier with all this knowledge than where I came from. Having to find that support groups, they weren't at my fingertips, and really sitting in and really learning all this information. And it was a lot, and there are so many women out there that don't even have a chance to get to learn too much because they're thrown into a whole family court situation. Knowledge is power. That's all I could say in every aspect of your life. Now, knowledge is power. Mm-hmm. And to this day, I'm still learning. I'm still learning new terms and new things about all of this stuff. It's a never ending journey. And the more you know, the more you learn, the more you can be a support to others. That's why I had to go through what I went through.
You're doing so much good with it, with your podcast, the Never Give Up show, and giving voice to people who feel alone. or just letting them hear the voices of those that let them know they're not alone. And I think that this particular chapter is important because you're essentially having to work against your own nature as a loving, compassionate, all the things that drew a narcissist to you and drew you to them. It's your nature. And what you really fell in love with was yourself, because earlier in the book, you talk about the term mirroring. And that's what they do, is they see what you're like and they give it back to you. And so I think it's so important, for one thing, to be able to say what you loved in them is what's great about you. It may not have been them. It may not have been, they were an illusion, like your title. But at the same time, you have to be able to say, okay, that's me, but that isn't that person. And that, I think in a lot of ways, really, that is the hardest truth of all to wrap our brains around. Because once you can kind of start to comprehend that, then everything else can make sense. Why they would use their own children as pawns in this war, this chess game, or as weapons of war. You can't comprehend that until you can understand that they really are that far away from the kind of person you are.
Unless you've been through it, or you really studied people that have been through it. It's the hardest thing to wrap around your head. And it's a hard topic to read about unless you're thrown into it, unless you need to. So that's why, it's very important. Your kids dating, wanting to get married. It's so important that they get educated and bring an awareness. There's so many different religions and communities. They live in a bubble, and they just can't bring themselves to even open the book or to watch a podcast, because they live in that little bubble. But it's real, happening to your next door neighbor, your friend, child. It's happening everywhere.
It's more common. I don't know the statistics. I hope that the research is being done, but it does seem to be a growing, I think you've called it a epidemic. Yeah. So for that reason, everyone needs to be aware, really. Well, your book does a wonderful job of storytelling and then educating, and you've got pictures. I'll hold this up. You've got section. Every chapter has a wonderful quote that goes with it. This is a good one. I'll read the one I just held up. It says, "You can be free of your narcissist, or you can seek closure. You can't have both. Freedom is possible. Closure isn't." That's a great quote right there with the closure chapter. So, Well, Bailey, thank you so much for coming back on Triumph Talks. I just really believe that all that you've been through is for a purpose. And like you said, and that you have so much to teach, and you're doing a beautiful job of it, both through your book and your activism. And I'd love to have you back again and continue to work through your book and what you have to teach more about escaping and also healing from all of this abuse.
That's the key.
Yeah.
That is the key.